All right, shalom, shalom. Let me get into these videos. It's about three videos. They're very short, straight to the point. All right, then I'm gonna get into this lesson. Give me 1 second.
To giving from a very young age. We're taught about the pilgrims and Indians meeting, becoming friends, having a feast, and living happily ever after. But when dealing with history, we must remember that history is just that, his story. The people left in control after the dust settles and the blood is done being shed are the people who write the history books and tells his version of the story. The true story of what people call Thanksgiving is not the story most people want to hear. The true story is that the first Thanksgiving was actually the beginning of the genocide of the Native American people, whose population was decreased from over 100 million to now just over 1% of the United States, 330 million people. Isaiah 5 and 20, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So it says woe, meaning danger, death, or destruction, to them that call good evil and evil good, which is exactly what is done with the Thanksgiving holiday, which was the beginning of the slaughter and genocide of around 77 million Native Americans and 23 million Native Mexicans. Because remember, a huge part of the United States was considered Mexico at the time. This marked the beginning of the end for their culture and way of living. Of the history that led up to and followed the first Thanksgiving feast to get a better understanding of how and why it originally came about. Prior to the 1620 Mayflower coming, interaction between the Europeans and Native Americans had already been going on for some time, but it really got started on a larger scale from 1492 to the early 1500s, when Christopher Columbus and other Europeans made their famous trips to America. Since that time, they began capturing what they called Indians, which literally meant savages, and started taking them back to Europe to sell as slaves. So it's important to know that the natives already began to distrust the Europeans from this point on. In the early 1600s, in the Massachusetts area, there was a population of about 100,000 Native Americans. It was far too populated for Europeans to come settle. So in 1616, European tradesmen made contact with the natives in the area and purposely gave them blankets full of smallpox, which started the 4-year period known as the Great Dying. From 1616 till 1620, this purposely placed plague killed about 90% of the natives in the area, which made way for the Europeans to now come and settle in this land. In 1620, the Mayflower, carrying 102 people, made its way to North America. After some misnavigation, they landed in what they called Plymouth Rock, which was actually already named Patuxet by the local natives. By the end of their first winter, 44 out of their 102 men, women, and children were dead. They died of scurvy, lack of shelter, lack of food, and because of the living conditions on and in the Mayflower. Also because they didn't know how to fish, hunt, or grow crops. After winter, the Wampanoag tribe made contact with the European settlers. This tribe had among them a Native American from another tribe that's known throughout history as Squanto. Squanto had been taken captive by Spaniards years earlier to be sold into slavery. He ended up in England where he learned to read, write, and speak English and eventually was able to return to America, only to find that his tribe was wiped out also by smallpox. So he was taken in by the Wampanoag. Squanto ended up translating between the natives and colonists, and both groups agreed to a peace treaty despite their known past. The natives then showed the settlers how to grow crops and live off the land. In a short period of time, the settlers were able to live off the land. From this point on, 1620 to 1640 became known as the Great Migration, where thousands of settlers would make their way to the Native American land. The first treaty made between the colony at Plymouth Rock and the Wampanoag tribe was soon broken and tensions arose. Saw the natives as godless savages. The governor of Plymouth Rock, William Bradford, was quoted saying this: "The Indians were savage people who were cruel, barbarous, and most treacherous." So the Puritan colonists made it clear among themselves that since the natives wouldn't convert to Christianity and give up their customs, people who were cruel, barbarous, and most treacherous. So the Puritan colonists made it clear among themselves that since the natives wouldn't convert to Christianity and give up their customs, they had to be removed. They also believed in what they called manifest destiny, which meant to them, at least, that their expansion was not only justified and inevitable, but that it was also their God-given destiny, no matter how many people had to die for it. May 12, 1623, just a few years after the natives showed the colonists how to live off the land, the Pamunkey peace talks took place in Virginia. The English lured about 250 natives to what they called a peace conference. They then poisoned the natives' wine, killing about 200 of them. Around 50 were said to still be left alive after the poisoning, so they then physically attacked and murdered them. May 26, 1637, English colonists led by Commander John Mason killed 700 Pequot Indians, which would later become known as the Mystic Massacre. The colonists launched this attack at night while the Pequots were sleeping in their homes. The village had a wall or fort-like structure around it to protect from outsiders, for good reason, knowing that the Europeans had been known for taking the people captives. So the colonists trapped the Pequot men, women, and children and burned the villages and people inside of it to the ground. The few that managed to escape were then brutally beaten and murdered. After these attacks, they would go back to their villages and have feasts to give thanks for being able to kill these large groups of natives. This became the tradition, and they repeated this Thanksgiving feast every time they would slaughter Native American groups or tribes. It wasn't until Abraham Lincoln became president that he decided to make it an annual feast instead of a weekly or sometimes daily murderous celebration.
Well, there you go. You know what I'm saying? That's the treachery, the rape, robbery, land stealing, genocide. I mean, you go down a grocery list, it's too much to even comprehend the level of wickedness of these devils. You know what I'm saying? That's why we call them the devil. We're not just saying that for no reason, right? So, and our people just don't have no, they lost sheep, docile, right? Just under the influence of Babylon. And they've been culturally assimilated to the so-called white man traditions and celebrations, right? They docile, they dumb down, right? Let's go here, right? So you saw that, you know what I'm saying? So what is cultural assimilation? And I went into this before, but I want to kind of expound on this. But when you don't have a culture, when you don't know who your culture is, all right, you're gonna pick up somebody else's culture. And five people, they don't know they the biblical Israelites, right? So what they have done is culturally assimilated to the so-called white man way. This is his celebration. This is his holiday that you're celebrating, right? And I know how people got all these different excuses, right? They'll say, well, this the only time the family can come together. They'll say this the only time we all from work, blah, blah, blah. It's just nothing but excuses, right? What is this culture assimilation? It says culture assimilation is the process in which a minority group or culture comes to resemble a society's majority group or assimilate the values, behaviors, and beliefs of another group, whether fully or partially, right? So you've been assimilated to the so-called white man values, behaviors, traditions, customs, right? And that was some heavy videos because you saw the so-called white man, right? He wanted the so-called Native Americans, which were Israelites, right, to convert to Christianity. And then when they didn't convert to Christianity, he would slaughter them, right? And that's why you are Christian today, right? That's why you have that image of so-called white Jesus in your mind. And that's why you do all your oppressor holidays. Our people don't stand for nothing, right? Because they don't even know who they are. Let's go here. Slakia. It says measuring at the very top. Culture assimilation is a challenge because data of culture practices, things like food, dress, and accent. All right, Salakia. Check this out. It says at the top, culture assimilation is when a small ethnic group of people integrates into a larger dominant group or culture. So you integrated into the so-called white man world. right? It said the small group adapts beliefs, religion, right? There you go, Christianity, right? And our people don't know this history. So that's why we've been sitting here to wake you up. So let's go here. Let's hit some precepts. I'm going to get just some milk. I ain't going to get too deep. Jeremiah 10 and 2, right? And this scripture is going into something else, but it applies. It says, thus said the Lord Yahweh, right? Learn not the way of the heathen. So learn not the traditions, the customs, the celebrations, the holidays of the heathen. And your number one enemy is the so-called white man, right? He enslaved you, beat you down, rape, rob, pillage, and this is the person that you copy. That's madness, right? So we got to snap you out of this spell through the spirit. And it says, be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. So you got chariots, you got solar eclipse, you got things that's going on within the heavens, which means the sky, right? That's affecting this reality here. For the heathen are dismayed at them, right? So our people, right, are caught up right under the spirit of Babylon. Let's go here. And this place literally has a spell on them, right? And until you snap out of that spell, you're going to be under the influence of Babylon. That's that wine, all right? It says Isaiah 60 and 2. It says, for behold, the darkness shall cover the earth. What is this talking about, right? Darkness represents ignorance, all right? And said gross darkness, the people. So the people are in complete ignorance. You got people hopping on planes, right? They into the folly, they getting drunk, they eating all this, food, right? They're totally wrapped into this spirit. They're gonna get ready for the football games, right? It just complete folly, right? But they're ignorant. These people are under the spell of this place. They're under the spell of the Edomites, under their heavy witchcraft, right? It says, but the Lord Yahweh shall rise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And if you don't stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. Let's go here. Mark 7 and 8. And this scripture is going into something else, but it applies, right? Mark 7 and 8, for you scoffers. For laying aside the commandment of Yahweh, Most High to never tell you to celebrate no damn Thanksgiving or Christmas or Valentine's Day or Easter. Ye hold the tradition of men. Ye hold the tradition of men. This is the so-called white man tradition. The one that had you in slavery as they did they so-called holidays, right? And the first slave trade was when they did the so-called Native Americans, right? The transatlantic slave trade was the second leg of the slave trade, all right, for you so-called blacks, right? But they came and got the natives first and put them into slavery, the triangular slave trade, all right? Then the other slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, came later, right? And they go to show you that the original Native Americans were brown-skinned, right? And they was Israelites. It says the washing of pots and cups and many other such like things ye do. So the Messiah was getting on them for something else, but washing pots and cups, the tradition, right? So let's go here. And this is docility of our people. They docile, right? They've been so wrapped into this American culture, that's all they know. It says docile, a docile, ready to accept control or instruction, submissive, right? So our people are submissive towards the so-called white man way, right? Towards his holidays, his traditions. They've been defeated, right? Let's go here. Right here. Docile implies a predisposition to submit readily to control or guidance. There you go. Let's go here. It says docile, quiet and easy to influence, persuade, or control. Well, there you go. Right? So I'm running out of time. I want to hit this last scripture, Romans 12 and 2, conform not to the world. It says, don't copy the behaviors and customs of this world, right? So I'm running out of time. All right. Hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Allah Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashem, Rachak Wadash. Shalom.